Alright, so we're going to work with the gradient mesh tool, and usually I wait to show you these things, but I thought today I could show you how the completed project will look, and then we'll go back and rebuild it and work over top of what we've got here. So basically the gradient mesh tool is a really cool thing. This pepper shape in my base here is created with one object. So if I click on this, you'll see a whole bunch of crazy looking lines, and it probably looks very confusing and intimidating right now, but we'll work through this step by step and you get to see how cool this thing really is, because you can rebuild faces, you can do all kinds of things. I chose this because it's a little simple and a little silly, and I think we need a little brevity when we do stuff like this, so I hope you enjoy this tutorial. So the very first thing we have to do is I'm going to turn off these layers. So what I've done here is I have imported the same photo twice, and we should be pretty familiar with how to do that. And once we have that imported, we're going to jump straight into building another pepper base. So I'm going to put this in here and create a new layer. I'm going to lock down the old layers so nothing happens to them, and I'm going to call this new pepper. I can spell too. Okay. I found a great tutorial online, but I think we can do you guys a little bit better, and I'll set this up and hopefully it'll make more sense. But what they said in the tutorial that I just looked at is the best way to start is to create a rectangle, and you're going to create a rectangle that basically hits the edges that you need, just like that. And once we have that rectangle, we are going to sample the colors out of this side. We're going to make it real easy. So I'm going to go over here to the eyedropper tool, or you can hit I if you would like. Sample around until you get something that you really like, something that you think is representative of the whole pepper. I kind of like right in around there, and I think that ought to do us pretty nicely. So now we have our shape has been defined. It's just a box, and we're going to go back in and refine that. But before we do that, we are going to come up here and we're going to create a gradient mesh. So come down here about a third of the way. Gradient mesh, there is no key command for it. And I have preview turned on. There's all kinds of stuff. If you have center turned on, you're going to get a highlight in the center. If you have edge turned on, you get a highlight on the edge. Obviously you can change the transparency level of your highlight if you would like to use that. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to set this up for a 2x2 right now, because if we go in with a whole bunch of crazy lines, it's going to be very difficult to keep track of. So 2x2, say OK, and now you've got that ready to go. So as we did in some of our other tutorials, we're going to take this control key and click on the visibility, and now using our direct selection tool we can come in here and we can move this. Now you'll notice that we have Bezier curve handles, but what's kind of weird is that you cannot use the anchor tool to straighten these out the way I would like. You'll notice that it's not really changing anything. So we'll just have to deal with things as they are, and I'm going to take this and move this edge down here and pull this Bezier curve all the way in because we don't necessarily need it. And then I can take this guy and pull it up more or less like that. We don't need to be exact, but we can have a little fun with it. So then over here, I'm going to pull this guy down, and I'm going to pull the handle up a little bit. Pull this handle over, and since we have our corners already in here, I should be able to pull this out and pull this to where it needs to be. Now, isn't that confusing? Look at that. Some of them have corners, some of them don't. Thanks, Adobe. Alright, so let's come over here, maybe on a corner of your object, you get the straight Bezier curve handles, and then in the middle perhaps you get, let's see, yep, that's exactly what's going on there. So in our centers we're only going to get the straight handles, and on the edges we can get corner handles, which doesn't really do a whole lot. I still want to try this and see if I can change this. Ah, look, I can change that one, but I cannot change them back to one continuous Bezier curve handle. A little strange. We'll move on. So now we have our shape, and we can go back and hit Control and see what we've got. So everything looks pretty cool there. Why don't we save this before we get any further, in case anything happens. And now what we can do is we can start changing the shape here to mimic some of these curves in here, and you'll see why in a few minutes. So if I create this, you'll notice that we have more than just two directions of Bezier curve handles. We've got up and down, and we've also got an in and an out. So I'm going to make this curve kind of mimic what we have in our pepper shape, which will greatly help us. So let's see if we can get the anchor tool to pull this one. Yes, we can. So back and grabbing the objects direct object. What's this? There we go, the direct selection tool. And I'm going to make this look curved here. And I think I'm even going to come in and get the anchor control point tool, and we're going to do that. So now that we have this, here's where we start getting into some of the fun stuff. So if I come over here and select this anchor point, I can give just an anchor point within a gradient mesh a color using the eyedropper. Watch this. Didn't do too much for me there. Let's try and grab another anchor point. And we'll grab color over here. Still not giving me a whole lot of results. Why are we not getting any results? There we go. That's what I was looking for. So, very powerful tool. Really, really incredible stuff going on now. Imagine what you can do if you added a whole lot more nodes, which is what we're going to get into. So, let's just make very sure that we have as much of this defined before we get too far. It's always better to define things when they're simple, especially with the gradient mesh tool. So now let's go and grab this color over here. Okay, so it looks like we can start adding some highlights and some shadows and things like that. So to add a highlight and shadow, over here, if we hit the U tool, we can add gradient mesh functionality, I guess is the best way to put it. So if I put a line here and a line here, I can recreate what's going on here. So let's select this, and we will put a highlight in there. Probably not exactly what you're expecting, but that's all right. We'll get this yet. So now let's put one right about here, and then we can make that color much darker. There we go. So now we're starting to get some of this craziness going on. And what we're actually going to be doing is more or less painting by moving these things around. So if I butt these lines up really tightly here, you'll notice that I get a nice hard edge that kind of replicates this crease in the pepper. And then if I wanted to, I can pull this shape. You gotta be careful how you select your nodes here. There we go. So now I can pull this out, pull this guy over a little bit, and maybe we want to redefine some of these colors. Maybe that's not exactly what we had in mind, but keep in mind as you create these shapes, it's very much like a wireframe in some of the 3D programs you may have seen. And the more we can echo the shape of this by using what we might call cross contour lines. If we were in Art 1, you can do a lot of really neat stuff. So let's see what happens if we change this this node right here, change that to a darker color like this. So not exactly what I had in mind, but not bad, not bad. So then we can come in here and start adding some other nodes here for some other colors. Let's try that. We've got a nice highlight going here. Let's grab something like this. Now it's starting to really start to take a three-dimensional shape. So we're just going to keep playing with this and having a little fun with it as we go. If you get confused, I'm going to be around so that we can make sure everybody's comfortable with this, because I think this can be a really fun tool. Ideally, at some point you'll create some kind of a shape for your own rather than just recreating the pepper, and we'll do an assessment on it that way. So experiment, check things out, and see just how far you can push this gradient mesh tool. So this is all the same stuff that I did to create this pepper. So what I did was I took the stem, and you can see that is a gradient mesh. The googly eyes here, they are somewhat gradient mesh, but not too much. So this is just our friend, it's a let me show you how I set this up. It's a white object, as you can see over here, and if you come into the appearance mode, I gave it an inner glow with a multiply to create this googly eye looking thing. The actual eyes in here are gradient meshes. And I didn't go too far with my highlights. Down here for the down here to create the shadow, I used the pen tool to create that. And if you go into the attributes once again, you can see that I feathered this. And right now it's been feathered by how much? About 0.2 inches. And that's in a nutshell how I created this. So I will make this available to you so you can see how these are all playing out. I'll put this up in the Google Classroom, and I think you guys are really going to have a good time with this. So enjoy, don't struggle, just check it out and have a good time. Thanks.